Once again, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this first of its kind session. At least for me, this is the first time I'm conducting a session on Excel and ChatGPT. So this is a bit of an exploratory session. For example, if I have to teach you about, let us say, pivot tables or charts or Power Query, I have years of experience and use cases working on it. But when it comes to ChatGPT, it's so brand new that we're all learning. So I hope you don't look at me as an expert. I might be an expert at Excel, but I don't think there are any experts on ChatGPT because we're all learning. But then whatever I have learned in these couple of months, I would like to share those learnings with you. It's an open session. The chat window is open. You're allowed to unmute yourself. So please talk to me, ask me any and all questions that you have. And of course, I'll try my very best to answer them. So jumping straight into it, a quick background, just 1 minute on this, just so that you know me a little better. I think some of you already know me, the others who probably do not know me. My name is Havish Madhupati. I run Havisham Consulting. It's an independent consulting firm. In terms of my background and qualifications, Havisham Consulting is a Microsoft partner. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, an Office Master, a Microsoft certified expert, and a data analyst associate. Havisham Consulting is also a NASSCOM member. I was listed on the 40 under 40 analytics by Analytics Insight in 2019, and I'm a member of Harvard Business School Online 2021 cohort. I'm also a visiting faculty at IIM Kohikode, Shriram College of Commerce, IIT Ghaziabad Center of Distance Learning, MD Murshidabad, Shahid Sukhdev College of Business Studies, and IIM Shillong. But I've taught and engaged with multiple other B schools. In terms of clients, again, it's pretty varied. So I work a lot in the CPG sector, the energy and power sector, a lot of government setups, I work a lot with media. I do a lot of sessions for Economic Times, for example. And in the past, I've conducted over 250 trainings for EY and PwC. At the moment, I do a lot of sessions for DHR, for their financial operations team. Yeah, all of these are not really relevant to what we're discussing today. If you're interested, you can go ahead and have a look at my YouTube channel later. All the details are there. Now let's quickly talk about what we're going to discuss today. I want to start with how you can use ChatGPT to get step-by-step instructions for something that you do not know how to do. Next, we'll talk about how you can write a formula just by giving it the explanation. Then if we flip it over, we also can give it a ready-made formula. Let's say somebody has created this really complex formula and you're not sure how it works. So you can just give it a formula and ask ChatGPT to tell you step by step how the formula is working. We can use it to write Lambda functions. Now, some of you perhaps have not worked with Lambda before. So I'll make sure to spend a little bit of time talking about Lambda functions as well. Then on the programming side, we can talk about how you can write VBA code from scratch, which means that you don't have to be a coder. You don't have to learn anything about coding. You can just give a one-line statement and it does the entire code for you. We can also use it to optimize code, which means that let's say you already have some code with you and you would like to refactor it, make it more efficient. That also works. You can also build sample data, and I'll talk about what would be the use cases for doing something like this. Okay. So starting with our very first example. Now what you see here is I have a data set where we have 3 items, A, B, and C, and I have the sales value. And this is a very common way that the data has been presented to us many times. Why is that? Because when you make a pivot table, this is how the tabular view comes in, right? Which means that you have these blank cells. Now, of course, we know that to fill up the blank cells, I can either copy the values down or I can press Ctrl D or drag it down. But what would be the best way of doing this? Now, imagine that perhaps some of you already know how to do it, but imagine for a moment that you do not know how to fill up these blank cells and you don't want to fill it up manually because it's going to take you a lot of time. For example, right now we only have 17 rows. Imagine you have 1,000 rows with you. What do you do in that case? Now, please note that I have ChatGPT Plus, which is the paid ChatGPT, for which I paid $20 per month. But then in terms of the capability, there really is no difference. All of you should be able to go back, create a free account on ChatGPT, and essentially ask the same questions, right? All right. Now, what we're doing here is I want to tell ChatGPT that this is an Excel problem, right? So I'll just say it's an Excel problem. Now, you do not know what is the perfect way to ask a query. If you can see on the left side, you can see that I've been experimenting and using ChatGPT for my work over the last couple of months. So there is a learning curve, right? If you ask me, hey, what would be the perfect way, Havish, to ask a question? I can tell you what to do, what not to do, but I can't tell you what is the perfect query. See, it's a model that keeps on evolving. So a lot of trial and error experimentation is important, right? Okay, so I have said that it's an Excel problem, and now I will say, fill all blank cells in column A with the value in the cell above it. I think this is as simple as it gets. It's pure natural language. So I'm not putting it in a specific syntax. It's not a very complicated or a very systematic way of asking the question. I've simply said that fill all the blank cells in column A with value in the cell above it. Let's see what happens when I press enter. Now it gives me these step-by-step instructions. It says, hey, you can select the range of cells, right-click on the selected range and choose fill from the menu. In the submenu that appears, select down. But then this is manual, right? I'm really looking for a better approach. Look at the second one. It says, in an empty cell, enter the formula A1, assuming that the first cell is A1. Copy the formula, but then this also doesn't help me. So what I want to say is that, is there a better way? Now, this is where it starts to understand, okay, that Havish is not really looking at doing 3 items. Maybe he has 1,000 items. So now if you look at the answer, it has given me a quicker way of doing it with a keyboard shortcut. Please watch. So what it says is, I have to go to the go-to command, right? Let's follow the steps, everyone. I'm just keeping my file on the right and the instructions on the left so that all of you can see this clearly. Now, let's follow the instructions to a T. Let's see if it works or not. So I'm selecting all the data. I'm pressing F5. F5 is the shortcut for go to. Just like Control F is for find, F5 is for go to. Now it says, okay, now click on the special button and go to special. So now I go to special. And now it says, okay, in the go to special, select the blanks option. So I'm selecting blanks. And when I click on OK, it says that all the blank cells have been highlighted. So we can verify that, yes, indeed, that is working. The next step is, it says, press the equal to sign and then press Control Enter. Not an enter, a Control Enter. So what I'm going to do here is, once I come back to my Excel file, I'm just going to put an equal to. I will select the up arrow and then I will press Control Enter and voila, it works. Now see, those of you who have probably never done this before, you will find it super cool. Those of you who say, hey, Havish, I already knew how to do it, you might not be that impressed. But still, think about it. Think about a user who never knew how to fill up the blank cells, did not even know if it is possible or not. With just 2 questions, I was able to get these step-by-step instructions. Any questions on this? Anyone? Anything whatsoever that comes to your mind? This is not like a typical Excel workshop where I write a formula and you ask me, how does the formula work? It's like I said, it's more of an exploratory session. So any thoughts that you have in terms of how to use it, will it work if this is the case? What if I have a different return? Whatever you can think of, please let me know. I'll wait for 30 seconds, then I'll continue. All right, now let's do something a little more fancy, right? What I want to do now is I want to write a formula by giving the logic. Let's first look at the problem that we have, everyone. So if you look at my sheet, we have a date and I would like to know the start of the quarter. Now think about it. If it is the 17th of April, then the first day of the quarter will be the 1st of April. For the 28th of November, it would be the 1st of October. For the 5th of June, it will be the 1st of June. And for the 7th of July as well, it would be the 1st of June. Rather, 5th of June will be the 1st of April, and the 7th of July will be the 1st of July. It seems fairly straightforward, right? But it actually is not that easy, and I'll tell you why. Because Excel does not have an inbuilt function to tell you the start of the quarter. You have this in Power Query, but not in Excel. Now in Excel, if you had asked me, Havish, you're a consultant, how would you answer this question? Such a common financial operation. I would tell you, okay, this is the formula. So I will first say that from the date that we have, I would like to think about it. We have the DMY in this. So we have the day, month, and the year. So what I would like to do here is I would like to extract only the month. That means it's going to tell me, if you look at the values, and let me convert this into a number as well. It tells me that it is April, November, June, and July, which makes sense. Now I need to say that, okay, 4 will become a 4, 11 will become a 10, a 6 will become a 4, and a 7 will become a 7, because that's the first day of the quarter, right? We have 4 first day of the quarter. So we have January, we have April, we have July, and we have October. So now I'll have to do a conversion, which means that now I'll have to apply a VLOOKUP where I will say that, okay, take the original month and now give me the first month of that quarter. How do we do that? Now, I'm not going to explain this right now because this is not really an Excel training, but then you can see that this is clearly not easy, right? There are different ways of getting to the result, but then you have to do a VLOOKUP with an approximate match, which very few people use as it is. And that basically tells you 4, 10, 4, and 7. Pretty good, because 4 would be April, 10 would be October, 4 will be April, 7 will be July. Now I'll have to construct a date and I'll have to say, okay, let's make a date where the year is what? The year is the same year that is coming from our original data. Then the month we already have, and then we'll have to put the day as 1. And as you can see, everyone, this effort has to be put in for you to get the result, which is the start of the quarter, which means 17th April is 1st April, 20th November is 1st October, 5th June is 1st April, 7th July is 1st July. Now think of a user who doesn't know how to build these type of formulas. Even if the user knows how to do it, it still requires a little bit of effort, right? And it is possible that maybe there's an error that happens. Plus, it's not uniform. So you might write the formula in one way, another person might do it in a different way. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to ChatGPT and I'm doing this fresh in front of you. I will say my starting date is in the cell B6. You of course have to specify which cell it is. And now I want to say, tell me the first day of the quarter. So now I can also give it an example so that it understands my question better. I will say, for example, if date in B6 is 17th April 2023, first day of quarter should be 1st April 2023. Make sense? Let me press enter and see what happens. Check this out. So now it's first giving me some context. It's saying, okay, to calculate the first day of the quarter for a given date, you can use a combination of the month and the date function. Assuming that the date is in the cell B6, so it's also validating that is your input coming in the format that it expects. Now it's also giving you the formula and it goes one level forward and it also tells you how the formula works. First of all, let's even check if the formula is working or not. If it doesn't work, there's no point reading the explanation. So I'm just going to copy this, come back and paste it. And it works. Even though the formula here, as you can see, is very different to the one that I did. The one that I wrote had a date year VLOOKUP month in it. Theirs has a date year roundup and a month in it. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter. As long as you're getting the answer, it does not matter. And also it tells you that how it is working. Anyway, I won't get into that in detail. This is something you can practice later. Now you can also tell ChatGPT that I don't want all this uh, prefix and suffix. I don't want to know why did you write it, the step-by-step instruction. I just want to tell it, I just want a one-line answer, right? Because sometimes you just want the answer. You're not interested in everything else. So it says, hey, here's the answer. Pretty cool, right? Now, imagine that I had sent this file to you, so I can also copy this, come back and say, explain this formula step by step. Explain step by step. Okay, now check this out. So this is the formula that I have written, and maybe you did not understand it completely. Now, who do you call to understand the formula? So now you're telling ChatGPT, I want to understand this step by step. So now it explains that, okay, the year is the year, the month is the month. The array contains 4 rows with 2 columns. So basically it's converting the original month into the first day of the quarter. The VLOOKUP does the conversion, then the date is combining everything into a single answer like that. Now, this is where things get really cool, right? I mean, sure, I showed you how it can tell you the steps for performing an action, which is okay, but then this is even better because now you can actually tell it that, hey, this is what I want. It will build a formula, or you can tell it, I already have a formula with me. Explain it to me step by step. Any questions on this, anyone? All good, makes sense. Okay, let's move forward. Even though I've already done one of these examples before, the explanation of a formula, I still want to do one more for you to see how powerful the tool is. Check this out. So what we have here is an example that I do for a lot of my trainings. So this is a sales example where we say that there are these 9 employees and each of them have been given a target and they have to, of course, meet the target at least. They've also been given a product goal for product A and product B, and then they have the date of joining. Now, the way a person gets an incentive is only if they meet the target, if they meet at least one of the product goals, and if their date of joining is under 2 years. That means they must have spent, or rather over 2 years, they have spent at least 2 years in the company. Plus, there is a capping of $20,000. So this is the formula. Not a terribly complex formula, but not an easy one as well. It has an if, an and, an or, a year flag, a today, and a min, right? So I can just copy this. I can come back and I can say, explain step by step, right? So what it does is, it now tells you literally step by step how it is working. It says that, fine, Havish, the and will check all the 3 conditions. The first one is that D5 greater than equal to C5. Then it says, or either of them have to contain the letter Y. Year frac calculates the number of years and fraction years between the 2 dates, today and the date of joining. If all the conditions are true, then the result is minimum capping. So do you see what it says? This calculates the minimum value between D5 and 20, like this. How cool is that? Now here's the best part. You can also ask ChatGPT to modify your existing formula. See, so far we asked it to write a formula, we asked it to explain a formula, but we can also ask it to update a formula. Let's have a look. So let's say I'll tell it that this is my current formula that we already have, right? And I want to say, update my formula, both E5 and F5 should be Y. Do you see what I did? In the original condition, you're giving an incentive to the person if they meet 3 conditions. Achievement should be greater than or equal to target. Product A or product B should be met. Date of joining should be over 2 years old. But now the company says, hey, I only want to give an incentive if the person is meeting both the discrete product goals, A and B. Now, I don't want to go through the hassle of going through the formula and making that change because I might make an error. So I'm just instructing ChatGPT to do it. I'll press enter and now see what it does. If you look carefully, it says D5 greater than or equal to C5 and. So do you see how it has replaced the or with an and? How cool is that? So now just to show you that it is working properly, I'm just going to copy this, come back here and then paste it, and it works. Now you notice that this time, the first person is not getting an incentive. So Aaron does not get an incentive. Why not? Because Aaron is not meeting both the product goals. So under the first simulation, under the first scenario, Aaron gets an incentive, but here he does not get an incentive. If he had met the product B goal as well, then he would have got an incentive. So imagine that when you're doing like a scenario planning, this is such a great way of building different scenarios and simulations, right? Okay. Any questions, anyone? Right? Okay. Now, so far I've been telling you things that work. Maybe let's do one example to see when it does not work. So what I have here is the same data. And my requirement is that I want to make one column locked. That means these cells that you see, everybody in column C, I'm just putting a color here. My objective is that a user should not be able to change these cells. Everything else in the sheet, they can change, but except the target and except my formula, they should not be able to change anything. Now, what is the logic behind it? When you're sending a file to a user, expecting them to fill up some details, you're asking them to put in their date of joining, their achievement, their product A, product B. But you don't want to allow them to tinker around with the target. It doesn't make sense. Similarly, you don't want them to go and update the formula because the formula is pre-built. It should not be changed, at least not by the end user. Now, let's see that is ChatGPT smart enough to tell me how to do it. I don't know how many of you know how to do it, but let's see if ChatGPT can do it. So I will tell ChatGPT C5 to C13, okay, should be locked so that user cannot change the values. Okay, I'm going to copy this one more time and I'm going to say that similarly, H5 to H13 should be locked so that user cannot change the value. And then I will say that rest of the sheet is editable. So C5 to C13, H5 to H13 should be locked. The user should not be able to make a change. And the rest of the sheet is editable. So now it says, okay, can you first select the data? So I'm selecting C5 to C13. I'm following the instructions. Then it says, right click and go to format cells. So I'll do a right click and go to format cells. Then it tells me, okay, now you go to the protection tab. I go to protection and then it says, check the box next to locked to lock the selected cells. So I'm locking these cells, as you can see, like this. Okay. Now I'm closing the box. Let me do it one more time. So I'm doing it here as well, selecting, right click, and now I'm selecting format cells and I'm locking it. Right. Now it says, okay, now go to review, protect sheet. Right. So now I'm going to review and I will select protect sheet. And now I can decide what do I want. Do I want the user to select the locked cells or not? So if I deselect the option for select locked cells and I click on OK, now see what happens. I as a user can make changes. Do you see? I changed the Y to an N. But if I try to come to these cells, do you see? I can't even select the cell, let alone being able to change it. It is not even allowing me to select the values in column C and the values in column H. But here's the thing. This worked because I was working with a sheet which I had already worked on. Imagine you're doing this with a new worksheet. Let's see what happens then. So just to explain that, I'm just going to create a new worksheet. Putting the same data here, right? Okay, now watch. If I follow the same steps, if I select the cells and I press format cells, and then I look at the locked, it's very odd because it says that these cells are already locked. In fact, if all of you try to do this on your Excel right now, it will do the same thing. It will tell you that the cells are already locked. But that doesn't make sense because if I follow the instructions, according to the instruction, I have to lock it. But then these are already locked by default. So what's going wrong? This is where you have to understand that ChatGPT has only understood a partial problem. you have to be clearer. So what can I do? I can now tell it, update the steps. First, unlock the entire sheet, right? Only C5 to C13 and H5 to H13 should be locked so that the user cannot make any change. Okay, let's have a look. So with this revised question, now it says, fair enough. So because now I've told it that I first want to unlock the entire sheet, now it says, okay, now select all the cells. That means you press Control A, select the entire worksheet. Then I go to Format Cells, Protection, and now it says remove the lock. So I'm unlocking it. As you can see, I'm unlocking it. Now it says, okay, now go back and then you lock C5, C13 and H5, H13. And now you notice I'm putting a lock here. The rest remains the same. I go to Review, I go to Protect Sheet. And do you see what happens? Now I can make changes to any of the cells. As you can see, it's allowing me. But if I try to change any cell in column C or column H, it does not work. Now see, here's the thing. If you ask me, Havish, do you suggest that we even learn Excel or can we rely on ChatGPT? Honestly, I don't know the answer. I don't think you can rely on it blindly because, of course, some basic fundamental knowledge is required. And I'm being very honest and candid with you here. If you ask me today, I might feel differently some months down the line. Today, what I feel is that ChatGPT is better for a user. It's more practical for a user like me, who is already a very advanced user, because this is what I do for a living, right? It is more practical for me because I know how to ask the right question and I know when it works, when it doesn't work, when to modify the question, when to integrate it with my work. For a beginner, it's going to be very, very risky because if it doesn't work one of the days, then you're going to lose all trust in it, right? So that's the way I look at it. I feel that it's actually going to save a lot of time for the folks who already have better knowledge. It's not a replacement for learning. It's an aid. I don't think the purpose of ChatGPT is to not learn. I think the purpose of ChatGPT is to learn and not have to repeat and be redundant. The idea is to save time. The idea is not to replace the learning completely. That's how I feel. But the more I work with it, the more you work with it, I'm sure we'll feel differently going forward. By the way, now Microsoft has also introduced ChatGPT in Excel. Even though it's not working for me, there's some error that is coming, but it's still under testing. But eventually you will now be able to just put in a function and put in the prompt directly within Excel. So I would be able to say something like the temperature in Delhi is, and it should be able to give me an answer. Even though it's not working for me now, there's some bug in it. But then just wanted to let you know that you do not need to have Excel and ChatGPT open side by side. It is going to be integrated natively within Microsoft Excel very, very soon. Definitely by the end of this year, right? Okay. Any questions, anyone? Purushottam, I will be recording it and I'll make sure to share the recording with you. I hope it's okay if I don't enable the recording on your end. Just something I don't do as a principal, but I will make sure to send the recording across to you. Right? Please do stop me, everyone, whenever you have any question. Now let us come to the visual basic part of it. So I have a requirement. I want to create a table of content. That means I want to create a sheet called index, and that sheet should have a list of all the sheets. So I want something like this. If you look at Havisham Consulting, the tab here, this is a VBA code that I have written for myself. So I go to Havisham Consulting, I select navigation, and then I select table of content. Now look what happens. The moment I click on that button, instantaneously, do not blink. If you blink, you will miss. The moment I click on it, look what happens. It creates a new sheet called contents with a list of all the sheets with a hyperlink and the serial number. How cool is that? Imagine the amount of time it can save you, right? But how does somebody do it? I mean, are you going to learn how to write a 50-line code? Of course not. That's where ChatGPT comes into play. So what I can do here is I can just say, write a VBA code, and then I can say, I want an index of all worksheets to be created in a sheet called index. The index sheet should automatically get updated. Let's see what happens. So I press enter. Look at the question as well first. It says, write a VBA code. I want an index of all the worksheets to be created in a sheet called index. The index should get automatically get updated, right? Okay. Now see what it does. It says, fine. Here is a VBA code that will create an index of all worksheets in your workbook and update it in a sheet called index every time a new worksheet is added or removed. So do you see, it's also telling you that this is how it has interpreted your question. Now see, I might argue and say, hey, I did not ask you to update it whenever a new sheet is added or removed. I only wanted you to update it every time a new sheet is renamed. But ChatGPT went with its own interpretation, but it is at least telling me that, hey, this is what I understood, so that me and ChatGPT are on the same page. That's the beauty of it. It's not that it will assume whatever it does and give you an answer. It will tell you that listening to your input, this is what I understood, this is what the code does. If you want to modify it, please do that. Let's have a look. I just go to copy code. I will come back. Now see, you still need to know how to go to the VBA window, of course, but you can also ask ChatGPT to tell you, right? So please watch. I can tell it step by step where to copy and paste this code. I have never used VBA before. Make sense? So I'm saying that tell me step by step where to copy and paste this code. You've given me the code, but what do I do with it? Explain it to me step by step, because I'm an absolute newbie. So I press enter and it says, sure, here are step-by-step instructions. How cool is that? It says, and it tells me the most basic step. It says, open your Excel file, press Alt F11. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm pressing Alt F11. And basically this is the screen that opens up. Now it says, okay, in the Project Explorer pane on the left-hand side, click on the plus sign to expand it. That means this option that you see in the Project Explorer, you click on the plus sign to expand it. Then it says, right click on this workbook and select view code from the menu. That means I right click on this workbook and then I select view code. So this is the code interface. Then it says, copy the entire code, including the first line and the last line. So that's what I'll do. Copy code, right? Like this. What does it do? Now, when I run the code, so if I go back and I will run my code from the view tab. So I go to view macros. You notice there's a macro here. This workbook will update index sheet. When I click on run, it says there's an error, but not to worry. Let's quickly go through the code and see what it's doing. Okay. I believe the code will only run because that's what it interpreted when a new sheet is added. Let's give it a go. So add a new sheet and it still gives me an error, no problem. It says that there's an index sheet. Okay. Let's see if we are able to figure out the problem. I mean, I know the problem, but let's see if ChatGPT can do it. So now I'll tell it there is an error in this line. Now it explains to me that, okay, if you're getting the error, the possibility is that maybe you don't have a sheet called index. So it's telling me, hey, you got an error because we assumed that you have a sheet called index. So I'm going to fix that mistake. All right. So I'm going to go back to my Excel and I will fix that mistake. I'm just going to call this index. And now let's see what happens. So now when I add a new sheet, did you see it worked? It is actually now giving me a list of all the sheet names and a sheet number. One more time. Imagine that I select a sheet and I delete it. If I right click and I delete it, again, do you notice now it is not showing me that extra sheet that I deleted. Now I can be smarter and I can tell ChatGPT, you know what? If there is no index sheet, I would like you to create one. So that means I will say update my code. If index sheet does not exist, create one. So what is it doing? It's smart enough to understand that, hey, you're referring to the code that is already there. So now you notice, if you look at this part, it's actually going to create an index sheet, right? I won't run it, but I just wanted to give you an idea that this is the beauty of it. You can actually ask it a question. If it doesn't work, tell it, hey, why is it not working? Do the error resolution, fix it, update it, basically continuously keep on improving it. Of course, you'll not become a coder by using ChatGPT. Like I said before, I really feel that it is meant for somebody who already knows the coding part, but who wants to save a lot of time. To give you an idea, I've been spending time on a project. I spent about 50 hours on it. And I kid you not, I would have spent 150 hours on it if I did not have ChatGPT with me. That is the differential that ChatGPT has brought into my workflow. I'm not talking about others. I can't speak for others. I'm talking about me. A work that took me 1 hour is now taking me 20 minutes. That is the amount of differential that has come into my work. So you can imagine how much time it can save all of you as well. Any questions, anyone? Okay, let's do something a little different, a little easy. Now, imagine that you are working on a client project and you have to fill up some dummy data. So I say that there is ability, aspiration, and alignment, which are three potential metrics for talent performance management. And I ask you, can you fill in values of high, medium, and low? Seems very easy, right? But the problem is, how do you randomize? Like if I start to write, okay, let's say the first one is a high, and the next one is a high, and the next one is a, this is crazy because you have to do it manually. Now, if you say, okay, why can't I just copy and paste? Because then it's not random. Make sense? Creating random data is always a big challenge, very time consuming. You're never able to quite get it right. What can I do now? I can go to ChatGPT and say that. Okay, let me just do it in a new chat window. I will say, create a table with 3 columns and 10 rows. Okay, my columns are aspiration, alignment, and ability. Okay, and then below this, I will say that high, medium, low. Okay, so now we'll say that I would like you to put high, medium, low in all the cells randomly. Let's see what happens. So I told it I have a table with 3 columns and 10 rows. My column headings are aspiration, alignment, ability. Put high, medium, low in all the cells randomly. Do you see this? How cool is that? Now, maybe you made a mistake. Maybe ability was supposed to be 1, aspiration 2, alignment 3. So what can I do now? I will say, I want the same table, but aspiration, but order of columns should be, so first we want as ability, aspiration, and then alignment. So it understands that, okay, everything is okay. You just want it to be different in terms of order, ability, aspiration, alignment. But then you realize, hey, I can't copy it because I already have the heading with me. So I will now say, remove the heading. So now, the moment I say remove the heading, it just gives me the data, right? Taking a little bit of time. Let's be patient. Okay. Now what it did was it gave me the data, but it's not in a table. Now he'll say, okay, I want it in a table. So now it finally gives it to me in a table, right? So now I can copy it, come back, and simply paste it here. How amazing is that? I can't tell you how many years I've been doing this stuff, because I worked originally in marketing research where we had to fill up a lot of dummy data to do our testing, keep placeholders. Even today, I mean, as a data analyst, there's so many situations where I have to create dummy data. That's a big hassle. So much time, energy, effort goes into it. There are a lot of errors that come up and you're never quite happy with the result. What I can also do is I can also tell it 80% of the responses should be high. How cool is that? So now, because you're expecting, your hypothesis is that you expect many more highs to come in your final data. So it doesn't make sense to randomize it. 33, 33, 33. Make sense? So now you can actually tell it, hey, you know what? I don't want to get high, medium, low equally spread out like a bell curve, or rather uniformly. I would like high to appear a more higher number of times. Okay. Now I can also say also add 5 cells with an Excel error. Now, do you see what this is doing? It is adding 5 cells with an error. Now you might say, but Havish, we want to remove errors, right? Why are you creating errors? But do you see why I'm doing it? Because this is a real world business scenario. Imagine that I'm training a team member, or I'm teaching a client how to work with data. You don't want to teach somebody on a perfect data set, right? You want to teach somebody on a dirty data set, on a real world data set. We all know that real world data sets have errors in it. So I'm actually now asking it to create errors in it. How cool is that? Now, suddenly you realize, hey, I had one more column. So I had agility as well. So you can simply say add agility column as well. So you don't have to rewrite everything. You can just keep on asking follow-up questions. So the moment you say add agility column is smart enough to add an agility column. How cool is that? Okay. Now I can also say add 10 blank responses. Right? Okay, but I don't want blank responses at the end. Not at the end. I want 10 blank responses within the existing data. Okay, even though they're not giving 10 blank responses, but you get the point, right? It still works. So I'm just trying to show you that there is no guidebook, right? I'm sure all of you must have seen on LinkedIn how people are putting these PDFs and screenshots of how to use ChatGPT. All of us have to learn it, right? I know a lot of people say this. I'm just echoing the same sentiment. AI is not going to take your job. AI is not the threat. Your job is going to be taken away, or for that matter, my job is going to be taken away if I don't work hard by somebody who knows how to use AI. The reason I am not waiting for my client to come to me and say, hey, can you use ChatGPT for the work? I am putting in all the energy and the effort, being an early adopter, learning these things, is because I hope you understand how much you have to spend time learning how it works. Sure, if you wait for 6 months, probably people can teach you because then better use cases are there. But then I think really getting your hands dirty is the best way to learn it, right? I mean, no matter how many sessions like this you attend, this is a good start for you. But then the purpose of doing the session was a little selfish. It is as much about you learning as it is about me learning, right? Because when I teach, if you ask me questions, then I'm also able to ask more questions, right, to ChatGPT. Okay, so we have 15 minutes. Let me just continue and show you. I don't know if any of you are programmers, but if you are, you'll be very, very impressed to see this. Check this out. I can basically go to ChatGPT and say that in VBA, I'm giving it instructions. I'm telling it, I have a command button, which is called CMD_submit. Let me just show you how that looks. I'm telling it that I have a command button called CMD_submit. Then I'm saying my text box is called txt_folder path. So I'm telling it this is called txt_folder path. Now I'm telling it that when the user clicks on the button, if it is blank, give an error saying cannot be blank. If it is a number, tell the user it cannot be a number. If the path does not end with a slash, tell the user it's not a slash. See what happens? The moment I press enter, it actually builds the entire code for me along with comments in it. How amazing is that? Right? So I can just copy it. Right? I can just come back. Well, look what I'm doing. I'm just double clicking and pasting it like this. That's all. Let's see if it works. Now, when I click on the box and I say 9777, it says folder path cannot be a number. If I say, okay, what if I make it blank? Then it tells me folder path cannot be blank. What if I give it a path, okay, like this, ending with a slash? Now, this is not correct because this is not a folder path. It's just some text. So now when I click on submit, it doesn't give me an error. So now I realize there's some problem. I have to update my code to also tell it that if the folder path does not exist, give me an error. Please watch. So I'm now telling it that I would like you to update my code, because what if the folder that the user is giving does not exist on my computer? So now look what happens when I copy and paste it. Look what happens. If I enter a folder path, something like this is clearly not a folder path on my computer. Even though it is ending with a slash, it now tells me, hey, the folder path does not exist. But assuming that I had taken a folder path that does exist on my computer, something like this. Now, this is a folder path that actually does exist. So now it does not give me an error, right? Like that. The final example I would like to show you is in terms of optimization. So I guess this might also be useful for some complex Excel formulas. I haven't tested it, so I don't know if it will work or not. But then it works superbly with VBA code, with programming, which is what I would like to show you. So what I'm telling ChatGPT is that, hey, I already have a code and the code works. Basically, I'm taking 8 text boxes and I'm changing the back color to green. Even if all of you have never worked on programming, I'm sure this is very easy. You're selecting a text box, making it green, selecting the next text box, making it green. But what I want to do is to optimize the code in one line. Let's see what happens. So I press enter, check this out. So it says, hey, you can optimize it. You just need to write for each. So it builds a loop for me. How brilliant is that? Now this means that now I don't have to go and write 8 lines of code. I just need to write 1 line of code. Now I can also say any alternative, right? Because I want to check if there's any other way of doing it. So when I say any alternative, it says you can also do it this way. But now I'm saying alternatives in 1 line only. So now it's giving me some very different option. It says, hey, you can use this, but then it's not giving me VBA alternatives. So I can say alternatives in VBA. Now, do you see it's giving me a for each? It's giving me a for each in a different way. So again, I can't tell you every possible thing because there's so much that is there in ChatGPT, but I hope you get a sense of how it can be used. It's not that it can replace your entire work, but then once you identify the pain points, see, a lot of people say, I'm going to use ChatGPT for the complex stuff. I'll be very honest with you. What I've realized, it's not really with the complex stuff. You know why? Because with the complex stuff, the stakes are so high. I don't want to risk it. I would better do it manually till I have confidence in the tool. That's one reason. The second reason is it might be complex, but it might not really be the most time-consuming part of your job. Maybe there's a part of your job which is highly repetitive, right? Where you have to spend a lot of time doing the same task over and over and over again. That is where I feel it is a better fit, a more natural fit. Because why are you even using it? If you're spending 5 minutes on a task and ChatGPT reduces that to 3 minutes, is it worth it? No. But if you're spending 30 minutes and it reduces that to 10 minutes, that's a differential, right? That's the delta that you're looking at. And of course, sometimes you ask it something you do not know. For example, I was doing this in one of my trainings, if you allow me to tell you. I was telling people how to, so DAX formula in Power BI to calculate YOY, which is the year-over-year change. Right? So I was explaining this to somebody in a Power BI training. Suddenly somebody said, hey, how will I do this on Tableau? You know what I did? Check this out. I just said in Tableau, and now it's telling you, hey, in Tableau, you can actually write like this. How cool is that, right? Now imagine I'm working on a tool which I have never worked on before, something like Click. I can say in Click, and it will actually give me the formula. It won't make me like an expert user, of course not, but then at least gives me something to start with, right? To what extent will it help you, your function, your industry, your sector, your company? It remains to be seen. I don't think there's anybody who knows how much this will help. But that said, if you look at what TCS is saying, they're saying that they have already identified so many areas where this is helping them. They are saying that there are critical areas where this has become indispensable. I'm telling you in the morning, the first thing I do is to open ChatGPT when I open my system. That is how integral it has become part of my workflow, right? So if you're not able to get the right answers and use it well, ask yourself, can you be better at it rather than judging the tool? You know, and the final thing I would like to say is that these silly things like people saying, oh, I asked it a second standard question and it gave me a wrong answer. What idiocracy is that? Why would you use ChatGPT to ask a second standard question? The purpose of ChatGPT, in my opinion, is not so much about replicating what we already know how to do. It is about identifying what is the pain point, very time consuming, reducing the turnaround time. You don't want to fix something that isn't broken, right? If something is working and I can't optimize it further, there's no point of using ChatGPT. I don't think this will be how people learn, but then it will save you a lot of time. So imagine that you have done a course on Excel, for example, and then you're competing with somebody who hasn't done a course, but who knows how to use ChatGPT. Any guesses for who will be faster? That's what you have to ask us. So that's why I am spending all this time, because I'm a consultant. I charge per hour from my clients. I don't want to go tomorrow and write a complex formula. And then the client says, hey, my guy did it on ChatGPT in 5 minutes. Then I'm obsolete, right? I'm not needed. So I have to be top of my curve because I have to be ahead of others. I have to learn ChatGPT better than others. How am I going to do it? I don't know. But what is in my control is the amount of time and effort that I put in. That is exactly what I'm doing. I'm putting in all the energies behind it. I'm not being lazy. I'm not giving up. When ChatGPT troubles me, it irritates me, I don't give up. I ensure that I keep on fighting with it. And I think that in the last couple of weeks, I've really got much, much better at it compared to the first day when I started working on it. Perfect. I think I've given you quite a few examples. I think good enough for for an introduction. I've left the one on Lambda. I will just do that as the last example. I don't want to leave this one, but anything that you would like to ask anyone. Okay, so let me just do the final one then, and we'll finish right on time. Now, how should I explain it? Hold on. If I ask you, how many values are there in both column B and column D? How many values are repeating? Think of the use cases. Maybe you're doing a reconciliation. You want to see how many vendors are matching. You want to know how many GL codes are common. You want to know how many customers are loyal. You want to know how many employees are working on 2 projects. There are hundreds of use cases around having 2 lists and trying to reconcile it. If you do this with VLOOKUP, this is how you would do it. First, I'll write a VLOOKUP. I will search for B4, B8, and I'll search for it in D4, D6. The index number is 1 and it is a false. So what it does is it tells me that, hey, ABC is coming. There are 2 NAs, that means D and E are not repeating in list number 2. But then how do you only get those 2 values? So now I can put in a is error to convert the values into false and true. And now I can finally filter my data and say that from the original list of 5, only tell me the values which are true. So it tells me D and E are the unique, the new values. I won't get into the formula right now. All of this is there on my YouTube channel. It's under a playlist called Dynamic Arrays. Filter is error VLOOKUP function. But the main thing is it's not easy, right? I'm sure many of you have not even used the filter function before, if I'm not mistaken. And many of you would never have used VLOOKUP with more than 1 lookup value in the same formula. So the thing is, how do I do this with a Lambda? So the purpose of a Lambda is that you can create a repeatable function. Let me explain. So this is the function that I have with me, right? And just to give you some background, the introduction of Lambda in Excel was such a big deal that when it was introduced, Satya Nadella basically went everywhere. And he spoke about how Excel formulas, which are the world's most popular programming language, has now become Turing complete. So I'm not making it up. I'm not telling you I feel it is important. Satya Nadella went everywhere and tweeted that Lambda is like one of the biggest, not just an improvement, but the biggest introduction of a new feature that has happened in Excel, right? Okay. Now, how does the Lambda get created? Very quickly. So I have my formula here, which is like this. To create a Lambda, which is a reusable function without programming, I can put in a Lambda. Now I put in my parameter, which are 2 parameters. One is my list 1, one is my list 2. So I see that we have list 1 and then we have list 2. After that, I can just continue to write the same formula, which will be that I want to filter B4, B8, which is my list number 1, comma. Then I want to do an is error. where I want to do a VLOOKUP. I want to search for list 1 in list 2, and I want to do a 1 and a false. Now, you might be wondering, Havish, I've written the same thing. So, I mean, what is the point? The point of a Lambda, everyone, is that yes, you still have to write the formula. It's not that the formula doesn't have to be written. The very same formula has to be written, but it becomes reusable. Let me show you how to do that. I'll just copy the entire thing. Okay. One more time. I'm just going to press Ctrl C, go to formulas, name manager. Now I will go to new. I'll create my own function called repeat values, and I just paste a Lambda that I've created like this. What it does is, just like you have a function like VLOOKUP, everyone, which is a function that Microsoft has given to you like this. Now you have created your own function called repeat values. How amazing is that? And now the user, the end user, doesn't have to write this filter, is error, VLOOKUP, all of that. They just have to say, okay, here's my list 1, comma, here's my list 2. And how brilliant is this? It actually tells you the repeat values. Those of you who already work in the corporate, I'm sure you can connect to this and figure out how many times it is that we have to do it, this reconciliation. And it takes, it's not like rocket science, but it does take a lot of time, especially with larger data sets, right? Now, how do I do the same thing with ChatGPT? Let's see. So I will say, create an Excel Lambda, okay? Show repeat values from list _1 and list _2. So do you see what it does? It actually creates this for me. But then I say, but where's the Lambda? So say there is no Lambda. So now it's going to say, I apologize for the confusion. So it says, here is an example formula in Excel that shows repeat values. Then I want to say, I want to use the Lambda function. Okay. Okay. Finally, it understands. Even though what it has done here is a little different to what I did. It has not used a VLOOKUP, but let's see if it works. So I'm just going to copy this, Control C. I will come back. I will again go back to name manager. I'm going to call it new. Let's call it repeat values GPT. And I'm going to paste exactly what it gave me like this. Press OK. Let's see if it works. Repeat values GPT. This one, this two. Okay. Hey, you know what? Mine is actually not correct because I have done it the other way around. I've told it the values that are not repeating. But anyway, you get the point, right? That it worked. How cool is that? It actually gave you that Lambda. Now, if you say, but I don't know how to paste this formula, I can say, where should I put this formula? Right? So now it tells me step by step what to do with it, right? So I think we've covered quite a bit. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I hope you found the session useful. Remember, the session was not so much about Excel. I think with an Excel session, I can do a much better job than this. This was more about understanding how ChatGPT can be integrated with your current workflow, whether it's Excel, Power BI, PowerPoint, whatever it is. That's a different matter. But then it's really that good and that important for you not to skip on it. Okay, there's something on the chat window. Thank you, Shivani. Always nice to see a few familiar places. Excellent. I know all of you had a tiring Monday, first day of the week, so I won't eat up on more of your time, but I will definitely be doing more sessions in the future. At some point, I will also have a course on Excel ChatGPT. Most likely around July is when I'm planning. But yeah, I mean, in the meantime, make sure to get your hands dirty and work with it. That will be all from my side. You will get a link from me on email with the recording of the session as well, right? All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.